Sense. The baby conceived yesterday. We must be careful not to judge our circumstances too quickly. When everything started falling apart and all hell broke loose, if Joseph had misdiagnosed what God was up to in chapter 37, he never would have made it to chapter 50. Oh, but because he knew there was a promise. I'm so glad God made me a promise. And his promise is that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Don't quit too quick. Don't misdiagnose what God is up to. Because just when you think that God has taken his hands off you, that's when God is working behind the scenes, rearranging stuff, turning things around. He's still in the business of moving things. It didn't make sense when they sold Joseph in slavery. It didn't make sense when he was accused of sexual harassment. It didn't make sense when Potiphar's wife had him thrown in prison. And some of you under the sound of my voice have been through some situations that don't make sense. The divorce didn't make sense. The affair didn't make sense. The unfair termination didn't make sense. The abuse you endured didn't make sense. The baby conceived by your spouse while you were still married, it didn't make sense. The promotion somebody else got when you should have received it didn't make sense. The rejection didn't make sense. Oh, but you ought to throw your head back and give God some praise for providence. That my life is tied to a God who's still in charge. If you don't get anything else, if you don't remember the scripture, if you don't remember the text, open your mouth and give God praise for providence. I'm so glad that in all things, God works together for the good of them that love God, that those that are called according to his purpose. What I'm trying to tell you is but God. Anybody here got a but God testimony? Anybody here got a but God shout? But God is how Paul was delivered from a jail. But God is how Rahab, a harlot, entered in the family of Jesus Christ. But God is how the walls of Jericho came tumbling down. But God is how you're still here, still got your right mind, still got a praise, still got a shout, still got your life. Let the redeemed of the Lord say yes. Yes. Where my praise is at, I'm so glad that I stuck around for the conclusion of the whole matter, and it does not yet appear what I'm going to be. Hey, but when God gets through with me, I'm coming forth like pure gold. Sometimes you just have to holler and give God a crazy praise. Where my but God praises, you ought to thank him. But God should have been dead.